Pokemon Crystal was a beacon of hope. So, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. I've rewritten this script a couple of times now. The first draft of this script might have equated to an 8-minute video, where I gave the briefest description of my time in the game and mostly just sing its praises. Now, while I still will be telling you all about the breath of fresh air this game was to me, I wouldn't be doing it justice the way things were before. As I've told you in my video on Yellow version, I've watched several Pokemon videos as of late, but I think not only do I want to cover the same content as those videos, but I may also need to take some notes from them. Do things a little more personally. Take a little more time. Really dive deep into what this game means to me. This is a game I don't need my AVGN shirt for, like Sonic, so I want to really explore the impact this game had on me. For starters, I made over 15 different recordings for this game. I didn't record every single moment of the gameplay, which is why there were so many. I also don't like any single recording being over an hour or two in length, if I can help it, and I do have over 30 hours in this game. I have that many hours, not simply because, well, it is a much beefier game than Yellow, but also because I did enjoy my time with Crystal. And to reiterate a little, I did not want to spend 30 hours in a game to only talk about it for 8 minutes. I decided to take my time with the game, to stop and smell the Roselia a bit. Yes, that's a Gen 3 Pokemon, I'm aware, but let me make my puns. Whereas, I plowed through Yellow as fast as possible, making little effort to do many of the things that the game offers up for you to do. I actually took my time and did more of those things here. Did I do absolutely everything? No. But I'm also playing this Game Boy Color game in 2025 as a grown adult. I don't really have the ability to catch event Pokemon, make trades, or even spend a lot of time doing time-sensitive things. Yes, as I'm sure most of you are all aware, small tangent here. If I'm the first person you've ever watched cover this game, I'm so sorry. No, actually, let me rephrase. If I'm the first person you've ever watched cover Pokemon Yellow, I'm sorry. But no, this time, you're getting a lot more thorough coverage of the topic at hand. So maybe this will be a better representation than before. Watch that previous video and learn what not to do. But back to what I was saying before, I'm sure most of you in the year of our Lord 2025 know that the second generation of Pokemon games crammed in a lot of new features, with Crystal specifically getting a few unique ones, all on its own. To the point I was trying to make with all of this, the second generation has a day and night cycle. This affects the time at which specific Pokemon can be encountered. And while I did play through this game at all times of day, I do have a full-time job and the overall energy level of a 17-year-old Duracell that left the crusty white residue on your long-neglected Indigo Game Boy Color's battery terminal. I'm not traumatized. I don't know what you're talking about. So don't expect this old man to ever complete a Pokédex in these games, at least not in the older ones. And even though I do own a physical copy of the Japanese version, I don't speak Japanese, nor do I own the mobile GB adapter, so I can't use that to get Celebi. Don't think I could now if I did have it anyway. Luckily, they cut that feature for the US release, and Celebi along with it. So no worries there, I guess. But I think the single most impactful feature that was added to Pokemon Crystal specifically, at least for me, has to be the sprite animations that were added to the battle sprites. It's amazing what 5 to 10 extra frames can do to make these creatures actually feel alive. Before, a single static image would slowly slide into view and be followed by the tortured metallic howl of the frozen creature before you. While the metallic screeches of the damned can still be heard, at least you know the creature that made it chooses to stand still this time. It amazes me though that they waited to include this feature again until Pokemon Emerald, which is the final game in the third generation, a trait shared with Crystal for sure, but the technology was there. Game Freak had proven that they could animate these sprites on inferior hardware with Crystal and the Game Boy Color. There was no good excuse to not do so on the Game Boy Advance. As a small compromise, at least they do statically bounce up and down a bit. As a bit of an animator myself, this tickles me to the core to see these sprite animations though. Okay, before we dive further into the game itself, I just wanted to talk about something a little more personal. Pokemon as a series has had a huge impact on me growing up. I don't remember exactly when, but I know it was early, maybe about 7 or 8 years old. I started drawing, and I mean all the time. I started creating my own characters and coming up with all these stories. So much so that my grandmother started buying me comic books. Naturally, this molded me further. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make my own comics. But something that really pushed me to the next level was Pokemon. I had the original strategy guide to Red and Blue with the full art of all the original 150 Pokemon, and I drew every single one. Sadly, I no longer have these. I have seen a couple floating around in storage from time to time, so if I ever find any of them again, I'll be sure to snap a picture. But this just further increased my passion for drawing, storytelling, and of course, games. If I ever achieve the level of content creator where I replace swearing and sweating at a mobile home manufacturer with doing this as a full-time job, I would devote a decent chunk of my time into telling that story I want to tell in a proper way. Though these days, I think that would be through a game. But back to Pokemon, and the visuals of this game, I have to say that I was completely blown away by just how vibrant Crystal is. Compared to Yellow, it's like going from a monochromatic, simplistic, empty space to a vibrant, fleshed-out, fully realized landscape of colors. Obviously, the battles still take place in an empty white void, but the overworld actually looks like something now. This was also the first game in the series that gave you the choice to play as either a boy or a girl. It's funny that a game that's all about making your own adventure took so long to give the player this simple choice. But at least it's here. While I have played through the other Johto games on offer, this was my first ever experience with Crystal specifically. So yes, while there's a lot of familiarity here, for me, this was still a fresh experience. It does help though that it's been over 10 years since I've even touched one of these other games. So I'm not quite going in blind, but I think it's as close as one can get when they grew up with this series. I played with a more varied group of Pokemon this time as well. The only constants were my starter, a Cyndaquil that I named Sexy Back, and a Zubat called Suck. I really wanted a Crobat for this playthrough, and the new Dark typing helped me make use of his Bite. But it is quite the process to get them to evolve. The rest of the team changed throughout to better suit my needs as the game progressed. I decided I'd run with the Sudowoodo and the Red Gyarados when I encountered them, but even they weren't guaranteed a permanent spot on the team. I really enjoyed the little bit of story that this game had on offer. Unlike Gold and Silver, there's a focus on Suicune. Fitting considering that this is the Pokemon that graces the box art this time. It is my favorite of the legendary dog trio, so I'm glad I didn't have to chase it down to catch it. It eventually faces you in a static encounter. As with the rest of my team, when I did eventually catch it, I was sure to give it the name Box Art. And in the late game, I carried it on my team. My only real complaint I can muster against the game is the difficulty scaling. That doesn't mean that the game gets overly difficult in a manner that makes the game inaccessible. No, it plateaus about halfway through. So even though there's so much more in this game than in the previous entries, with 16 badges instead of the usual 8, and the original Kanto region to explore once you've cleared the Johto League, you never see trainers with Pokemon over level 50. Until the final battle. And what is the final battle, you may wonder? Why, no one else but Red, the trainer you play as in the Kanto games. And he's been silently training during the years since his time with the league. He's got Pokemon in the 70s and 80s, If you do not prepare for this fight, it is quite the reality check. I was not able to pull the same stunts I did in Yellow. I had to grind for this fight. Even still, I was underleveled, and I relied heavily on items to win this fight. He had a team that, surprisingly, largely resembled my team from Yellow. He leads off with a Pikachu, and his team contains a Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur. But with time, patience, and several full restores, and a revive or two, I finally came out on top. And once Red is defeated, the credits roll. This game is way more cozy and inviting than the first generation, and I enjoyed it all the way through. Again, I didn't do everything. I didn't spend a lot of time with the battle tower. I didn't try to catch every Pokemon. I simply played this to enjoy the experience. And I did. Now yes, my enjoyment for the game definitely delayed the release of this video by several weeks, but that is not the only reason. As I mentioned in my last video, Sonic Genesis on GBA, I had a kidney stone. Well, that decided to cause me lots of problems, and I had to have it surgically removed. That kept me from working. That kept me from making videos. Honestly, I'm still dealing with the aftermath, but at least I am finally well enough to do this again. But I do think I'm going to play some shorter games for a little bit before I get back to Pokemon. I'd started playing Fire Red, but I'm going to save that for a little bit. It's amazing how your health can up and ruin your plans out of the blue. But with that out of the way, I'm sorry it took me so long to make this video. We're going to try to get back on our normal bi-weekly schedule. Thank you to all those that have stuck around. I've been making long-form videos for almost a year now. So do the YouTube stuff that helps me continue to make these videos, and as always, stick around for more!